Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
I'm Jonna Johnson, and today grab a hot beverage because it's pretty nippy outside in most of the U.S.
Yeah.
And a virtual donut as we launch into this week's news. We'll be talking about a new AI chip from Microsoft, a new industry certification from Mplify, cybersecurity-related news from Google, AWS, and CrowdStrike, and more.
We're sponsored today by Forward Networks. Enterprises rely on Forward Networks' network digital twin for unified, trusted automation across distributed hybrid networks. Forward Networks' digital twin ensures connectivity isn't disrupted, security posture is unchanged, and compliance is maintained at all stages of change management. Forward Networks' digital twin is the difference between risky automation and operational certainty. Learn more about how to protect your network and your sanity with Forward Networks at forwardnetworks.com/packetpushers. And by the way, before we do the news, check out our brand new Packet Pushers salary survey. You can find out what your peers are earning in the US and around the world. We've also got data on how certifications and tools correlate with salary satisfaction, and more. You can get it for free and easy download at packetpushers.net/salary survey. All one word. Go check it out. All right, John, let's hit a red alert.
Okay, the red alert today is the HPE Juniper authentication bypass, but we do have a strong runner-up. We'll get there in a second. There were 1,377 CVEs created in the week ending January 29th, and 3,093 were updated. Of the ones created in the last week, 182 were critical with a 9 or higher on the CVSS scores, and 16 got a 10 out of 10. This week, the red alert goes to CVE 2025-21-21589, published January 27th, which scored at 9.8. It announces the existence of an authentication bypass using an alternate path vulnerability in HPE's Juniper Session Smart Router, Session Smart Conductor, and WAN Assurance Router. That means an attacker with network access can bypass authentication, oh yay, and take administrative control of the router. It affects most 6.x versions. Juniper has republished the CVE this week. As you could tell, it was first released in 2025. Yeah. Usually this means a change in affected platforms, discovery of a new way to chain it with other attacks, or active exploitation in the wild. It also, frankly, probably means that Juniper is aware that a great many folks have not updated to patch versions of the software, so kind of please do that. Juniper is nudging you. So
yes, patch refresh notice.
Yes. Links in the show notes. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a runner-up for today's red alert. SolarWinds reported a web help desk authentication bypass in RCE, which is really a suite of CVEs. CVEs 2025-40551 through 554. They're all pretty severe at 9.8. They include multiple data serialization and authentication weakness and bypass vulnerabilities that can allow remote attackers to invoke program functions or execute arbitrary code on the host. One guess as to what the fix is: upgrade to the latest version. Check out more details again. Again, that's CVEs 2025-40551 through 40554. And of course, as always, links in the show notes.
Yep. All right, into the news. Microsoft has announced the Maya 200. This is the second generation of its custom silicon for AI acceleration, specifically targeting inference acceleration. The chip is fabricated using TSMC's 3-nanometer process. It can deliver over 10 petaflops in 4-bit precision and over 5 petaflops of 8-bit performance. Microsoft also claims that the new chip is offering 30% better performance per dollar than any hardware in its current fleet. Microsoft is interconnecting via Ethernet rather than InfiniBand. They say it's exposing 2.8 terabytes per second of bidirectional scale-up bandwidth and can support operations across clusters of up to 6,144 chips. Microsoft says the chip has already been deployed in its U.S. Central Data Center region in the U.S. state of Iowa. U.S. West 3 in Arizona is going to follow, and then a wider rollout. I will note that AWS and Google also have custom AI inference silicon. All three of the big hyperscalers are looking to, reduce dependence on NVIDIA.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that everybody's focusing on inference silicon. I mean, that's been the main shift in the past, call it 12 months or so. We took a look at the NVIDIA keynote at CES as well as at the AMD keynote. And it is kind of interesting that the big difference between the strategies of the two companies is that AMD is sort of placing its bets not just on AI and is in fact partnering with a lot of the AI vendors. NVIDIA is really trying to be all things to all people AI. So it is developing its own systems, not just chips. It's developing its own software. It's got open software that it's releasing. So It's basically trying what I call the prime the pump strategy, trying to get everybody to buy off on these applications for its silicon and then selling the systems, selling the chips. And so that if you're AWS and Google, that is actually, they're kind of starting to step on your turf. So that's another reason they want to back off a little bit on that.
Yeah, for sure. Just to wrap it up, Microsoft has announced a preview version of the Maya SDK for developers, which includes a Triton compiler and support for PyTorch. So links in the show notes if you want to get more details. Moving on, Mplify, which is formerly the Metro Ethernet Forum, has announced a new carrier Ethernet certification to validate that service provider networks have the performance to support, guess what, AI workloads. The certification is called Carrier Ethernet for AI. Mplify writes, quote, the certification supports interoperability across the AI ecosystem, enabling service and technology providers to demonstrate proven capabilities for flexible, reliable, and efficient connectivity. In particular, the certification will test performance around frame delay, inter-frame delay variation, and frame loss ratio requirements for AI workloads, and those details are coming from the Mplify datasheet. John, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of interesting. Mplify, for those who haven't been following it, again, was the Metro Ethernet Forum. They have morphed into the network as a service industry forum. So they are not for profit. Their goal is to make sure that networks can support the loads that they're intended for, can support the applications they're intended for. So that's what they're doing with the certification. They're also making sure that they actually validate that, which is quite interesting. So I'm not sure why a carrier network would actually want this. Either it does or it doesn't support the workloads. But if we start seeing carriers, if they're starting to pick up some credibility, I guess, when it comes to sales, then I can see them really moving that way. The thing is, right now, a hyperscaler is not going to take any industry certification. They're going to test the living daylights out of it. So the question is, who is it that this is designed for? Someone too small to do their own tests, but big enough to be doing AI workloads across the WAN. That's kind of an interesting Venn diagram overlap.
Yeah, the Mplify was saying, like, if you are sort of a regional service provider or carrier and you think there's business out there for AI, having this certification stamped, on your data sheet might just, differentiate you slightly from a competitor. So I think that's the big push.
I understand, but it's still, any carrier, whether big or small, is going out across the WAN. So the question is, like, okay, you're not. Like most companies that are doing massive amounts of cloud applications, whether AI or not, are going to get a cloud link, link directly to the cloud. Sure. You don't need a network connecting you to the cloud. So it's sort of like, okay, so there's the Venn diagram overlap of people who are doing a hell of a lot of AI in the cloud, but are too small or unwilling to buy that direct link. Okay, I don't know how many people there are out there, but I guess Mplify thinks there's a lot. So there you go.
Enough, yeah.
Enough, right.
One other note, that Mplify is also rebranding the MEF 3.0 certification. It'll now be called Carrier Ethernet for Business. If you are already certified at MEF 3.0, you can sort of get the new badge, Carrier Ethernet for Business, without any cost. And if you are thinking about that Carrier Ethernet for AI, you already have to have Carrier Ethernet for Business certification. So you got to do that first before you can do the AI.
This is really starting to smell like Boy Scout badges. I'm wondering, do you get a sash to wear them on?
I support AI and wilderness survival.
Exactly.
And I can light a fire.
There you go. All right. Speaking of hyperscalers and AI, AWS has announced that it's adding filtering for generative AI traffic to its network firewall. Although it may be weak on stopping known exploits, as you can see from the link below, AWS's network firewall is getting some added functionality to help organizations get a handle on their GenAI traffic. According to the news blog entry on the release, the firewall can now block access to GenAI tool domains, restrict access to only approved services, and when combined with the firewall's TLS inspection feature, see and filter on the full URL path. The firewall accomplishes this with category-based filtering rules, and I'm willing to bet there's AI behind the scenes, but never mind. And in addition to using individual categories, filter rules can use combinations of them. They cannot, however, be combined in a single rule with geographic IP filters. Fortunately, although AWS is focusing the announcement on AI sites because AI, Category-based filtering rules can also be used to identify and control access to pretty much anything else you want to use, social media, streaming sites, sites that you don't want your employees to be using. You know what they are. Unfortunately, there's no support for custom category definitions, so the 51 categories predefined by AWS is all there is for now. That said, AWS is maintaining a category database, and they note that using the feature, may increase traffic latency, but here it is. So a couple links in the show notes. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as you were reading the description, I was like, well, isn't that's just a firewall, right? So is it essentially that they just added AI tools as a category to make it easier if you are building out a rule set? Or because it doesn't sound like there's anything that I couldn't do with a firewall anyway in terms of configuring it. Maybe it's just a category to make it easier. Like instead of me having to individually say, I don't want you going to ChatGPT or Anthropic or Mistral or whatever, and having to enter those rules by hand, I can just click a category. I'm trying to understand, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a piece of it, but I think the other thing is it's not just restricting access to the tool domains, but you can actually drill down and say, okay, you can use this from ChatGPT, but not that.
Okay, a little more fine-grained.
Yeah, it's a little more fine-grained than that, and basically, basically get very granular on what people can do and not do. And then the value of this, of course, the use case would be that if IT or anyone else inside governance, anyone else inside an organization has said, this is how I want my employees to be using AI, they can now actually execute on that, which is at least with AWS.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a sensible, if you've got a firewall product, a sensible addition. But thanks for the clarification.
Absolutely.
All right, let's pause for a word from our sponsor, Forward Networks. Forward Networks creates a digital twin of your network. Enterprises rely on Forward Networks for unified, trusted automation across distributed hybrid networks. Now, if you think a digital twin is just like a network map or an inventory list, think again. Forward Networks Digital Twin is a mathematically precise digital replica able to model all config and state data on every device and trace every possible packet path. With Forward Networks Digital Twin, you can ensure that connectivity isn't disrupted, that security posture is unchanged, and compliance is maintained at all stages of change management. That's why enterprises rely on Forward Networks for unified, trusted automation across distributed hybrid networks. With Forward Networks Digital Twin, you can eliminate change-related outages and subsequent headlines. That's why Forward Networks Digital Twin is the difference between risky automation and operational certainty. Learn more about how to protect your network and your sanity with Forward Networks at forwardnetworks.com/packetpushers. That's forwardnetworks.com/packetpushers.
And I just have to say, given that Forward is now sponsoring us, I was dreaming about exactly this over the holidays. I woke up and I'm like, wow, that'd be really interesting, that kind of a digital twin of a network using AI. And I was kind of amused. I was like, okay, I'm sure companies have done it. I just haven't talked to them yet. And so here we are.
Yeah, and just so to be clear, Forward Networks was doing this before AI came along. Again, they're using some mathematical verification techniques as opposed to AI. But so it's your dream was answered years ago, in fact.
Yes, in fact. Okay, moving right along, Google and its partners have disrupted an IPIDA residential proxy network. This week, Google announced that along with partners in law enforcement agencies, internet platform service providers, and security research firms, it's acted to disrupt what we believe is one of the largest residential proxy networks in the world, which I believe is pronounced the IPIDA proxy network. The group worked to do this together because the proxy infrastructure plays an important part in providing infrastructure and network access for a huge number of bad actors. They have, as Google notes, facilitated multiple botnets, including Badbox 2.0, Isuru, and Kimwolf, as well as providing residential IP exit points for, quote, I love this, a vast array of espionage, crime, and information operations threat actors. In a single week, Google observed more than 550 distinct threat actors, including groups running out of China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia, using IPIDA's proxy nodes to cover their activities. Google says its threat intelligence group, called GTIG, led the team's efforts across three fronts. Number one, legal actions to bring down domains that were hosting command and control devices and serving as routing points. Number two, shared technical intelligence on software development kits, SDKs, and proxy software for laptops, desktops, and mobile devices that overtly or covertly enroll machines into the network of residential compute nodes. The goal here is to drive collective enforcements against these SDKs to protect often unknowing users and to inhibit the network expansion. And number three, which is actually kind of interesting if you use Google Play, ensuring that Google Play Protect automatically warns users about and removes any applications known to incorporate these SDKs, as well as blocking any future installations of them. Google says it believes that these coordinated actions have caused significant degradation of IPIDA's proxy network and business operations, quote, reducing the available pool of devices for the proxy operators by millions. And they expect it'll also reduce, at least for a time, the easy availability of large botnets.
So the idea here is that the person running this proxy network took over like home devices, IoT devices, and so on, and uses them essentially as a proxy to route traffic through to help bad actors disguise what they're doing or where they are.
Correct. And the thing to remember in all of this is that decades ago now, the malware universe began to stratify into different economic layers. So they're the people that get the, you know, it's effectively like being gun runners to the mob, right? Like one group is the gun runner, one group is the mob, one group is the Russian mob, or whatever it is. And so essentially this proxy network was selling out its services to anyone who was interested in launching botnet attacks. And it's sort of like, oh, here you can have the infrastructure, and if you need to develop your software, here you go. Here's the SDK. There are other folks who will, for a fee, develop your software. So this whole thing was operating in a very tightly integrated economic ecosystem.
It's interesting that they're also putting this into Google Play Protect because it is an issue with, frankly, a lot of home users who, you know, through no fault of their own, their devices are getting compromised and pulled into these. So if people like Google and Apple and so on can make these devices more secure and also provide a little bit more heads up to consumers, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's for me, I found that the most interesting because they're basically saying, hey, we can get sucked into this, so we are going to make sure that, you know, we don't.
Right.
So interesting stuff.
Yeah, we have a link to the Google blog in the show notes. Moving on, QTS, which builds data centers, is no longer going forward with a proposed project in Wisconsin after residents pushed back against the 650-acre project that could have seen up to 5 data centers built in and around the village of DeForest, Wisconsin. Residents cited concerns including environmental impacts, noise and light pollution, and the potential for property values to decrease. I bring this up because I feel like the data center boom has kind of felt unstoppable here in the US, at least. This is obviously only one project in one area, so maybe it's just an outlier, but I do wonder if we will start to see signs of broader pushback as residents realize what happens when, you know, a data center operator rolls in with the dog and pony show to be like, think of all the jobs, think of all the money, and never really turns out that way. And instead you've got, you know, these giant server farms that make a lot of noise and maybe drive down local property values and don't actually have that much of a local economic impact to the positive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, if you're in a community that's assessing a data center, you know, at a personal note, don't do it because all that's going to do is drive up your energy costs. And
that too, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, my county is looking into this. We're too small to have a commercial energy company providing our electricity. So it's like an energy cooperative. We are not set up to handle data centers. It's just not like, and quite frankly, if anyone's opposing it, you know, I know people are going to say, Jonna, you're halting the inexorable, you know, advance of technology. I'm like, you know what? I got to say, if all this AI is really justifying all this data center build, they can freaking pay for it. If they're going to come in and pay us millions of dollars a year, not just to purchase the energy, but just for the right to have a data center here, talk to me about that. But you notice that, like, no, that never is the case. The people running the data centers are not planning to pay you large amounts of money. They just want to suck up all your energy, drive up your energy production costs, and use your land. So no, that's not water, actually. Yeah, that's not a win-win.
Yeah, so I hate to sort of be the NIMBY, but I also feel like residents should get some say in this kind of thing. There's a link in the show notes to a really good video by Business Insider about the impact of having a data center in your neighborhood. It's a really good video about these residents who live, you know, a few blocks away essentially from a giant data center in the Virginia area, and the noise is just sort of constant, and it drives people crazy, which is, you know, reasonable. Not to mention the fact of energy costs going up.
Yeah, and I mean, just generally, it's like, look, if AI is so great, it can pay for itself. If it can't pay for itself, it may not be that great. Not that
Right.
hard, right? Okay, moving right along. AT&T announces it is simplifying procurement of connected spaces IoT solution in Amazon Marketspace. So back on January 26th, AT&T announced that its connected spaces end-to-end IoT solution can now be purchased on AWS Marketplace. AT&T describes this as a plug-and-play IoT solution that combines pre-integrated wireless sensors and a secure cloud platform offering what it calls intuitive dashboards delivering what it calls actionable insights for small to mid-sized enterprises lacking in-house IT and presumably OT expertise. Using the dashboards, customers can track environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, motion, energy usage, and security in near real time, quote unquote. It is built to scale so customers can add sensors to meet evolving or expanding needs. Extended range and long battery life options are available for use cases requiring them, and all data is encrypted end to end. Kind of interesting. I'm wondering what the use cases are, but I can see like small manufacturing operations in like Brooklyn might find this really interesting.
Yeah, so obviously I was thinking, is this a consumer solution? It sounds like it's targeted at businesses who want to put up video cameras to monitor property, or they're running some kind of business where temperature sensitivity is an issue. So yeah, and if that's your specialty and not running an IT shop, I could see why a service makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, quite frankly, there are little shops that make things. Well, cupcakes are gone now; they're no longer a thing. But if you're making candy or anything bread related, you really care what the humidity is.
Right.
Most of us care about motion. You want bad guys not in there when they're not supposed to be in there. So,
Hmm.
you can see anyone who's selling something that needs to be temperature controlled or humidity controlled. Retail, small
Yeah,
manufacturing.
for
It's
sure.
it's a niche, but it's a real one.
Yeah. All right, links in the show notes if you're interested. We'll move on. Security vendor CrowdStrike is spending about $420 million to acquire browser security startup Seraphic. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Founded in 2020, the Israeli-based startup offers a JavaScript agent that can run in any browser and provide security controls, including things like data loss prevention, controlling whether users can copy, paste, or screenshot, and other functions. They say they can block credential theft, phishing attacks, and more. I thought this was interesting because the secure browser market is heating up, but my impression is the typical approach is that you would have to buy a sort of purpose-built browser from a security company and then try to get all your employees to use that. Seraphic's taking the approach of use whatever you want, but run our agent in there and get some more controls back.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of skeptical about the whole go whack on your browser as a business case. I know, a lot of the browser folks are putting AI in there, which just basically degrades performance. Now it's okay, buy your own browser and secure it, or go talk to Palo Alto and get a secure browser. It's sort of like it doesn't seem like the optimal solution has yet shaken out. I don't know whether it's going to be, something like this where pick your own browser and secure it, whether it's going to be just bite the bullet and go buy a secure browser and make everybody use it, whether it's going to
Right.
be, some Microsoft or Google goes out and pre-integrates this stuff. I'm just not sure we're there yet. The great thing about a browser is you just get it and install it, or it comes installed and you use it. As soon as you start layering on lots and lots of effort on it, it starts to get sort of like, why are we doing this?
I mean, in part for me, security is always a tug of war between needing to have controls in place and not getting in the way of people doing business. And these days, with so much work happening in the browser and folks being very, very picky about the browser they're using and how they've set it up and everything they do in it, trying to get them off a particular browser can be like, you need a crowbar for it. So if Seraphic actually can come in and add a little bit more security and control and visibility, or even just basic monitoring, that seems like a potential win. But yeah, it's that constant tension. If I really needed to be secure, maybe I should just buy a purpose-built browser. But again, it's all about herding people onto it. So
Yeah,
I
and
don't
I,
know.
I think I'm not saying that this is the wrong solution. I'm just saying I don't think we know what the right solution is because it's going to depend a lot on what
Totally.
people like to do, and I'm terrible at predicting what people like to do because if you base that on my preferences, we'd all still be using command line, and there would be no graphical user interfaces because I find them worthless.
Right. My impression is that people like to do what is easiest.
Mhm.
So that's usually how it goes. Just to wrap this up, Seraphic raised 29 million in a Series A round in early 2025. CrowdStrike was an investor, so clearly it's had its eye on the company. And CrowdStrike has also already integrated Seraphic into its Falcon EDR software, so they did have a relationship. Now they have just formalized it and engulfed them.
There we go.
Some financial results before we wrap. First, Microsoft announced their quarterly results, Q2 of their fiscal year 2026. The company had revenues of 81.3 billion, up 17% year over year. Net income was 38.5 billion, up 60% over this time last year. Not sure why they had that giant spike. While quarterly cloud revenue crossed 50 billion for the first time ever, Microsoft's share price fell more than 10% after the returns were announced because investors are concerned about Microsoft spending and whether it will see significant enough return on that spending on AI investments. Just for a data point, Microsoft's capital expenditures for the quarter were 37.5 billion, up 49% versus this time last year. So they are shoveling a lot of money out the door.
Yeah, but I mean, only in the AI bubble can analysts be concerned about the fact that Microsoft has an almost 50% margin. I mean, come on, guys. Net income is 38.5 out of 81.3 billion, and that's not good enough. Like,
Right.
okay. Oh yeah, cloud quarterly revenue crossing 50 billion, basically big stamp of approval on a major strategic shift they made years ago.
Yep.
It's like doing everything right, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna drop your share price because we're not sure if you're spending too much." Come on, people.
I, you know, I do worry about the AI bubble, but in some ways, I also do sympathize in that with big public companies like this, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because their share price could also drop 11% if investors were worried they weren't spending enough to keep up with competitors. So, like, they'll get you either way.
Yeah. I'll never forget. Sorry for the side note, but years and years and years ago, when the first Kindle came out, I remember
Hmm.
going, "Oh my God, this is absolutely brand new and novel." Because remember, it came out and it already had the Sprint network connection, so you didn't have to configure anything. You just opened it up, logged into your Amazon account, and bought books. And I
Uh-huh.
remember buying my second book because I just finished reading my first book. I was sitting on a plane going to some conference somewhere, bought my second book, and went, "This just changed everything." I called up a friend who worked as an investor and I said, "Dude, man, you got a long Amazon." And he laughed at me, lectured me, and told me that Wall Street sees things differently and that Amazon was getting dinged every single quarter because it would return all of its money back to R&D. They would never show a profit. If they had
Uh-huh.
any money, they'd put it back into R&D. And I remember thinking, Wall Street's nuts. this is why I don't do this. And every now and then I still sort of do a back of the envelope calculation. Like if he'd followed my advice back then, what would his fund be worth now?
Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch.
Anyway.
Anyway, did you invest? Oh, maybe I shouldn't ask, but
No,
did you
we
take your own
can't.
advice? Oh, you
No,
can't.
actually, one of the things I did. Side note here, when I started my research firm way back in the dark ages, one of the things I
Hmm.
did was make sure that everyone that works for us cannot invest because I found out there's a nice little scam going on in the research industry, which is you sign up small companies as clients. They give you friends and family shares when they go public,
Hmm.
and then you invest in them, and then you run around and tell everybody else to use them, thus driving their stock
Mm.
price up. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
actually corrupt. So
Yeah.
we became the first analyst firm in the business that said we will not do this. Everyone has to sign something saying no, we will not invest. And Forrester got all cranky on us and said, "Well, we do that too." And they don't. They just say they now run a disclaimer that says, "Oh, John Johnson has investments in Oracle, so or whatever." I don't, but John Johnson has investments in Oracle, so be warned. And I'm like, "Oh, goody." Right.
Interesting. Okay. I wish you could bring your model to Congress, but that's a
Yeah,
different
right.
conversation.
Don't even get me started.
Right. We'll wrap with results from ASML. They did their Q4 and full year 2025 results. ASML is the Dutch company that makes the machines that make computer chips. For the quarter, net sales were 9.7 billion euros with a net income of 2.8 billion euros. For the full year, net sales were 32.7 billion euros, up almost 16%, net income of $9.6 billion, up almost 27%. These were record results for the company. The CEO is forecasting more good results for the coming year, buoyed very much by the AI infrastructure build out. And they're also seeing lots of new business around memory chip production systems. So it's all upside for ASML at this point. Although in the earnings call, one analyst asked for more insight on the range that ASML has forecast for fiscal 2026, where there's a spread between 4% and 19%, which is a significant spread. The CFO said essentially revenues are going to be driven by how quickly their customers can build the fabs and complete them and then buy the tools. So if it can get done in 2026, they'll book that revenue then. If not, they're going to have to wait till 2027.
Yeah. But didn't they also announce that they're cutting jobs?
They did. They are cutting about 1,700 jobs, both in the Netherlands and their U.S. offices. They say the cuts are going to primarily hit leadership positions in technology and IT roles. It sounds like on the engineering side, they're still looking to hire. But yeah, so hug ops for the folks being affected by those job cuts.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering why that is, because leadership is not necessarily something you can replace with AI. Maybe they think it is.
It does seem like a lot of job cuts for, I guess I'm not sure how big ASML is, but smallish. Yeah. So
yeah, it seems like a lot of people, and they're also operating in a very uncertain geopolitical environment. Because remember, like they're the only guys that make this stuff. So they, one possibility is that they could decide not to sell to any particular country, not mentioning names, and that could really affect their income. They would also want to have their operating costs as low as possible to protect against that, which would sort of explain both that widespread on the future forecast as well as the job cuts.
Yes.
Like, hey, if we're going to have to boycott somebody or refuse to sell to them because they just did something bad, again, not naming names, there are a number of players here that could really affect their earnings. So yeah, that's kind of what I thought immediately when I saw the job cuts.
I feel like that's a fair guess, because 1,700 folks when your results were just super great and your forecast is also pretty darn good. They do face some political pressures about the United States essentially leaning on them, saying we don't want you to sell to, I'll just say China. But there are probably other customers as well that could be an issue. And if that business got cut, yeah.
If we're going to go there, Drew, I think the U.S. is actually a really obvious candidate, because the U.S. has been really making some moves that are threatening on the world front. And quite frankly, if Europe has to pull together and sanction the U.S., that first person I would pick up the phone and call is the CEO of ASML and say, could you please cripple these guys and make them dead in the water because they're being jerks about Greenland or whatever. So that was my first thought. I'm like, I'm really delighted that the U.S. is, delighted with quotes, but investing in semiconductor fabrication on its soil, but it's not going to do a lick of good without ASML. So I don't know. Maybe pissing off Europe is not a great strategy for the semiconductor industry.
If that happens, we'll have to invade Greenland and then the Netherlands, just because we'll have to. So we'll sort it. We'll sort it. All right. That wraps up the news portion of the show. Jonna, where can folks get more from you?
Please hit us up on Substack, nemurdies.substack.com. That's where a lot of the action is, and where we tell you about our cool new things, like our conference, where, note, we're getting some real cybersecurity luminaries talking at our conference that you may want to come see.
All right, check it out. I'm Drew Conry-Murray. I'm on Blue Sky at Drew CM. I'm blogging at packetpushers.net. I'm also over on LinkedIn. Thanks to our sponsor, Forward Networks. And of course, thanks to you for listening. If you have a comment, question, concern, query, whatever, hit us up, packetpushers.net/follow-up. We do love to get your feedback, and we will address it on the air if you're okay with that. And just to remind you, we've got merch, more than a dozen podcasts you can subscribe to, our industry blog, 2 weekly newsletters, our community Slack group, a YouTube channel, an IRC group, and more. Find it all at packetpushers.net. Always all free, no login required. Thanks for listening.